Yeah, well, you know, I've spent probably like, I spent about 10 years making a series of sculptural works in soft sculpture that were very much about the people behind the making of the actual objects I was replicating. And I'm talking about things like blenders and coffee makers and irons and domestic appliances that were made in the maquiladora industry. And through my sculptural work, I was trying to transmit to the audience the sort of emotional and psychological states in which these workers find themselves in, and trying to transmit that through visual aesthetics of each piece. And as time went by, I realized that that I really needed to kind of open the work up a little bit, and I realized that the work was bigger than myself and my interpretation of a particular theme. So I started bringing in people into the work, specifically the people that I was addressing in the work. So started working with immigrants in different communities throughout the United States, and I've started to think not in solo production but in collaborative production, and it's a very different way of working. It's a very different way of listening, really, for me as an artist, and trying to understand a certain situation in kind of a very different way. So I work with groups of immigrants throughout the United States to create works that are important to their communities, that are really kind of have an urgency to you know, the place in which they live and the people that they surround themselves with. And so there's somewhat like a more truth to the work. It's like more pure, if you can say that. You know, it really comes from the source, and it's made with the hands of the people that are you know, the main subjects of the works. So in that way, I have worked with groups in California, groups in Charlotte, groups in New York, groups in Texas, and I continue to promote this kind of production throughout the U.S. to kind of unite, you know, in some way create a network with the different immigrant communities in the U.S. through this art making process. I believe one of the most important things as an artist is to be true to yourself, be true to who you are, and be true to your individualism, because that's really what sets you apart, and what makes your work really unique. I don't think there's anyone who could have made this piece just this way. You know, I just really, you know, you kind of have to do some soul searching and ask what is important to you. And if some of the symbolism exists, it's because it's a part of, you know, what I'm involved with. It forms part of the culture that I'm working with, a community within a culture that I'm working with. This is a religious iconography that somebody might say, oh, that's Chicano iconography. It's Chicano art because there's Guadalupe, Virgen de Guadalupe. Yeah, in some way it's true. It's a lot more than that. I'm very, very proud to be working with symbols of the Chicano community and the Chicano art movement. I'm very, very proud to be embraced by this community, if I may say so, that I am. I was born in Monterrey, Nuevo León, grew up in Mexico, then I moved to the U.S., and I don't know if by definition I fit the label of, you know, Chicano artist, but I'm very, very happy to be that. I do consider myself a border artist, somebody who's addressing issues that are happening along the border, and the everyday popular culture existing on the American side of the border, which is so impacted by you know, the immigrant communities that are coming from Mexico. So, you know, I think Latino and Chicano is defined by language, it's defined by culture, and it's defined, you know, by genealogy. So, you know, I'm happy to be plugging myself into the Chicano community as much as I can, because I do feel like I am a part of it. Well, it's funny that you ask, because I've been thinking so much about the first time I ever did a silk screen in New York when I went to school. I took a graphic design class, and silk screening was one of our pieces that we had to make and learn how to make. And, so it's something I have done before, but not quite with the perspective that I have today. So when I first learned how to do it, was one thing. Now when I'm thinking of community and I'm thinking of the issues that I want to bring to my work, it's a whole different ballgame. And so for me, it was challenging to figure out how to bring that physicality to my work. How do I transmit the idea of labor and the idea of community and the idea of repetitive and sort of puncturing of the needle going through all of my sculptures? How do I bring that to the piece, and what meaning will that have? All those were really interesting questions and challenges for me. And there were some surprises. I think because I've spent so many years working in 3 dimensions. I do work with color decisions and color choices, but not quite in this really painterly way. You have to know how colors react to each other and how they overlap. Of course, that's knowing color theory and so on. I feel like I know enough, but certainly not to the extent that the guys here know. So Jonathan and Logan, who are working with me, have a real understanding of the way you can use color and overlap it and then take it away, and so the ways in which you can manipulate the material. It's a real specialization, and their experience in it day after day really comes through. So I love the idea of learning every day that I've been here, how to think in those ways, and how to be economical with materials, and how to achieve different colors with few colors, and all those things are just really kind of exciting and fun to be learning and experiencing. So I think we had like a total of 8 or 9 colors, I'm not sure, with this print. The last addition to the print is this cutout that I have made out of vinyl, and it's obviously the plastic part of an iron. The title of this piece is Iron Will, and it is a sculptural rendition, which I have made before. I've made sculptures of irons before, and so it's sort of kind of addressing the work that I've done in earlier years. But I'm very interested in sort of projecting the labor involved in the making of something, and the kind of repetition, and the physicality of it, and there's sort of evidence that a lot goes on for something like this to exist, and that is to very specifically symbolize and represent the amount of work and labor that goes in the making of an actual appliance. In the manufacturing maquiladora industry, where a lot of Mexican laborers are working day after day to make appliances like this one that sell on the American side, at a Target or Walmart, or in a place where they have no access to. It's interesting that they have to be a part of productions that are kind of becoming part of American everyday culture, and then therefore they are not really becoming part of this culture. So they're on the Mexican side, and these pieces are sold on the American side. That's really important to me, to kind of showcase that through the physicality of the work. So you have a cutout of the iron that represents an earlier work of mine, and it's also representative of a work that I'd like to make. I'm proposing this as a public art piece. I'd like this to exist large scale, and I'd like this to be made out of fiberglass, and this will be made out of mosaic. It's a piece that I'd like to make in the community wherever I get to install this sometime in the future, and I'd like to make this mosaic with the community surrounding this piece. So mosaic coming from people's kitchens, people's houses, cups and plates that are broken up, that can make up this religious iconography that is so important to a lot of the Latino community that, of course, I'm a part of. And then you've got the birds that are taking flight, and these are representing a public art piece that I'm currently working on at the moment in El Paso. It's a roundabout sculptural piece that I'm making with members of the community in Juarez and in El Paso. And the piece is titled Uplift, levantamientos in Spanish, and it's representative of that moment in which birds are taking flight, and it's that moment in which there's this kind of push and pull and this negotiation of communication and movement of body that needs to happen in order for the flight to exist. And eventually there's a wonderful harmony and synchronicity that the birds achieve to come into these symmetrical formations, and they achieve freedom in that way. And so for me, it's symbolic of what's going on across the border from where I live in El Paso and Juarez, where we've been fighting a drug war for so many years, and recently have seen drastic changes in the numbers of violence that have decreased over 1,000%. So it's this moment of like being able to take a breath and think, wow, you know, it's possible for life to start again and for peace to enter our communities again. And so this piece that's called Uplift is representative of that. And it's, again, it's a sculpture that will be installed in El Paso, and it's going to be the formation of about 1,000 birds that are taking flight. And they will be made in community with people from Juarez who've been brushed by violence in different ways, and people from El Paso who form altogether part of the border community. And we are using as a structural support for these, we're using pieces of confiscated guns that are being donated by the sheriffs in El Paso to support the structure of these birds. So it's a nice way to kind of connect some of the pieces that I have done in the past, things I'm working on presently, and things I would like to do in the future. It was kind of an interesting way to think about time and my work with it for this print. I'm privileged, and I'm really grateful to Sam to have invited me and to have shared, you know, those talents of the workshop people, Jonathan and Logan, who have so much knowledge and experience and who have taught me so much, really, to be able to do something like this. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So, you know, it's a real sense of community and solidarity to be working with this group, and I'm just really grateful for it.